Hey everyone, welcome to a new More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I am Jordan Smith. And not too long ago, we talked about the things that we did do or were excited about that we did in 2024. And now in this one, we're going to look ahead and see what we're looking forward to for this upcoming year of 2025.
Yeah, 2024 was more or less eventful, but we've got plenty of things to look forward to this new year.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I had a few things down. I don't know what you wrote down, but I'm kind of curious to hear.
Well, a lot of what I wrote down centers around any possible out of state trips that I'd be taking. There's at least four, possibly five, that I have scattered throughout the year for one reason or another. And the first one I have it's kind of up in the air right now, but I'm thinking I'm going to be doing it around Valentine's Day. I think I'd be going between the Super Bowl, like after the Super Bowl, but before Valentine's Day. I'd be going down to Florida because there is a convention down there that I went to last year, which is where I met those Sonic voice actors that I've mentioned. It's held in mid-February again, so I'll probably go down there and, of course, see some family. And I think it'll be a nice change of pace from when I last went to Florida the last couple of times. Because when I did, it was exciting to see them, but it was also because of things that happened with my mom. So this will be a more of a happier visit.
Yeah, yeah. I should be pretty happy it's going to be not till after the Super Bowl because if the Buffalo Bills make it, I kind of want to host a party for my friends. I'm thinking about doing that on a It's not really set in stone or anything yet, but yeah, I'll talk maybe more about that a little bit later. But
Sure.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm definitely gonna mention this Super Bowl here in a little bit, but I'm just gonna get through all the trips I have planned. The next one I have written down is to go to South Carolina in May. And the reason for that is because a friend of mine who I've known since fourth grade, so almost 20 years at this point, he's going to be getting married down there. And it's not a huge scale wedding, but I don't think that's what they would have wanted anyway, so it's perfectly fine.
yeah.
It just happens to be out of state, and this is something I wouldn't have wanted to miss considering how long I've known him.
Oh yeah, I understand that. And so, do you know where specifically in South Carolina, like Charleston, Myrtle Beach, or
It's in Charleston, yeah.
yeah, yeah? I actually a few years ago I took a little trip down to Myrtle Beach. Also spent some time in Charleston while I was at it. It's The weather, admittedly, wasn't the best. It was pretty gray and cold, but we got a good view of the beach from our little condo, and it's pretty nice. If you ever get the chance, I would recommend it.
Now, when did you say you went?
Um, it was a few years ago. I think it was 2019,
Do you remember what month?
February.
Okay, so that definitely would explain why it might be a little bit gray and cold because it's still the colder season.
Yeah.
Um, Hopefully, by the time I go in May, it'll at least be somewhat warmer. They're projecting already that it might be in the 80s, but we'll see.
Oh yeah, yeah. But it's nice. It was nice from my experience. The beach is pretty and all. Still,
Oh, I'm sure it is. I've had a lot of people tell me that that particular beach area is quite beautiful when the weather's nice. So I hope the weather is nice while I'm down there so I can take a look.
yeah, yeah.
Then the next one I have in mind is my annual trip down to Virginia in at some point in August. I don't have the exact dates yet, and the reason for that is that I usually base it around the Smash Brothers convention that's held in that area every year. Uh, I've been going every year aside from like 2020 and such for obvious reasons ever since I started going in 2018. And what's really convenient is that it's not ridiculously far from where my brother is. So I use that as an opportunity to also visit him and his family and possibly my sister. The circumstances around that may be a little difficult only because they're in the process, or at least trying to be in the process of moving. So hopefully by then it'll be done. And maybe depending on how that goes, I can visit them while I'm down there too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot, I know, but it's something I look forward to because I don't really get to see them very often anymore. So it'll be nice.
Yeah, I know. I mentioned probably before that I have a brother way down south. So the distance definitely makes it harder to keep in contact sometimes,
Hmm.
like except for of course electronically. But I did thankfully get to see him actually a couple times in the past 2 months in person. First in Tennessee for Christmas time, and then recently this past week after my granddad passed on, he and I got to go a little across, I guess, the upstate and lay our granddad to rest along with our cousins. So it was at least a good chance to spend another few days with him.
Yeah, that's definitely one uplifting thought whenever a family member is lost is you get to see a lot of other family members, some of which you may have not seen in a while. You get to catch up and grow closer than you were before, and especially in delicate moments like those.
Yeah, 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 it was good. It was definitely a bit of a surprise. We didn't. I don't know if any of us really expected it to happen this soon, though he was 89 years old. But it was a bit of a surprise, at least to me. And
Sure.
but on kind of the bright side, my brother flew in from Tennessee for the funeral and stayed with us in our place until today, actually. So
Also, he went back home today.
yeah,
All right. I'm glad to know he was able to be there for you guys and vice versa.
yeah.
Let's see. And then I know I have the idea of going down back to Florida sometime during the holiday season. It may be Thanksgiving, it's probably Christmas. But now that we've gotten the first Christmas without my mom out of the way, this next one, I would imagine, is going to be a bit easier to swallow, as it were. And again, another great opportunity to see family, especially those I don't often get to see.
So in Florida, you said?
Yeah, a lot of my mom's side of the family happen to live down in Florida, so
Yeah.
I get to see my grandparents, my uncle, some of my cousins.
Yeah.
So that's all the trips I wrote down. But one big thing that, well, there's a couple more. One being something that I'm sure Seth here has written down too, and that is this year's Artisan Limited production.
Oh
As of
yes.
yeah, as of now, we do not know what it is. That's probably going to be announced sometime in March or April, is my guess, unless there's some sort of delay. Um, I know some of the ones that they want to do are ones like Wizard of Oz, they've talked about possibly doing. They do want to do Aladdin at some point, which is a show that a lot of the cast is hoping we do at some point. The difficulty around that has partly been cost because the flying scenes can get a little pricey. And then when I talked to them last about it, and this was a little while ago now, Aladdin was listed as restricted. We're not entirely sure what that means. We're thinking it could possibly mean that certain groups like schools would not be able to put on a production like that, but maybe an organization like ours could. They still got to look further into it. But that is definitely one possibility. Wizard of Oz was the other one. Trying to think. And then I think Music Man has been often discussed, not necessarily guaranteed, but those are at least three that they've expressed interest in doing.
Yeah, Wizard of Oz and Music Man were two of the ones that I saw growing up, so it would be good. I'd at least have some memory to play off of if hypothetically we did one of those. And from my memory, those are two decent ones.
Yeah, I would say so. Artists Unlimited has done Wizard of Oz, I want to say twice now at this point. I've done it once with them. The other time was before I got there. Uh, but the one thing I know for sure is that our main director, Carl, he has heavily hinted at the idea that this next show could possibly be the last one he does with Artists Unlimited, which I honestly don't blame him because he moved to the Carolinas 2 or 3 years ago, I think. So that constant traveling back and forth would take a toll after a while.
Sure.
So yeah, as of right now, we don't know what the show is, but any updates we get, whether it be the announcement of when the reveal will be and then the actual reveal itself, we'll be sure to let you, the audience, know.
Yeah.
And
And I will
then,
say,
what's that?
I was just going to say, even if this ends up being Carl's last show, I think I can still very much be grateful for the time I got to work with him. Definitely, he's a guy I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and we go back, like, I don't know, maybe for about as long as I've been in my current hometown, 20 years perhaps,
Sure.
almost. And
And you
even
joined Artists
though
Unlimited in 2019, so
2019, yeah.
you've worked with him at least in the theatrical world for about 5, 6 years now.
Yeah, yeah, about that long. Yeah. I've known him since I was a kid. I was in one of his music classes at school,
Oh,
and he's been I've been always been a great guy to be around, and I definitely am thankful for the chance to actually to work with him, and more than that, learn from him how to be sharper as a performer.
right. He's definitely taught many people quite a few things, and some of them have gone on to Broadway and other acting projects. And one thing that I really like about the way he directs us, as well as some of the other directors, is that they might point out an error that we had or maybe some mistake that needs fixing, but the way they
Which they
go
probably
about it.
should.
What?
Which they probably should.
Well, yeah, you don't want to necessarily say good job every time when you know that there's something that can be worked on. But what I like is the way they approach it is they will say, it's like, this is what you're doing well, and this is what you can improve with. They're not saying you did awful, you need to do this whole thing again. No. Even when they're talking about things that need fixing, they do it in such an encouraging way. And when they give us direction, no matter how simple or difficult it is, they only do so because they know we can do it.
Yeah.
So it's very encouraging to work with them.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wrote down is something I am sure both of us would be excited for, and that is the possibility of an Eagles Bills Super Bowl.
Now that would make for a pretty interesting party if that happens.
Yeah. I know some very dedicated Bills fans. Some of them are very vocal when watching their games. um, but I can speak for a lot of people when I say that they don't want to see the Chiefs there again. So if for no other reason, they're going to root for the Bills for that reason. And of course, the Bills, out of the four teams remaining, are the one team that have never won a Super Bowl. So this could be their opportunity to make history.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
fact that
And
both of
even
our favorite teams still have a shot is very exciting.
yeah. Yeah, it is. And even if, say, like the Bills and the Commanders end up being the last two standing, and then even that would be pretty historical because I know from reading up on history, the second time the Bills went to the Super Bowl, they had to face Washington. Back then, they were called the Redskins, and Washington blew them out. So maybe this would be a great opportunity to see kind of a reverse of that. And yeah,
That would be true. And the Bills have been pretty solid. They're one of the few people or one of the few teams this season to take down the Chiefs at all. So I feel like if anybody can stop them from even getting to the Super Bowl and stopping them from getting a three-peat, it would be the Bills.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah. Allen has been reportedly like one of the two front runners lately for MVP of the league, but yeah, let's not get too cocky. Of course, we still got a ways to go.
Well, I think what helps them now is that the other person that I think was in contention
Lamar
with
Jackson,
them
yes,
is Lamar Jackson, who they just defeated.
right.
So I feel like I'm not like super knowledgeable in NFL statistics, but I would imagine that if the two MVPs clash and one of them comes out on top and moves on to at least one more game, that'll definitely boost Allen's status.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was mentally saying. Allen taking down Jackson would probably be like a boost in his votes or however the system works. It, it was certainly a pretty a pretty suspenseful showdown. I saw it on Sunday night, and and I think well, when they gave like the updates, it looked like Jackson's numbers were just slightly better than Allen's, but
Mhm.
Buffalo did just enough, barely anyway, way to edge them and knock them out.
Very true. And honestly, if the Bills do win the Super Bowl,
Yeah,
then this would be like Josh Allen probably couldn't ask for much better of a season because it would be his first Super Bowl win. It'd be the Bills' first Super Bowl win. He'd have a really good chance of being the MVP. He is now engaged. So this could be a really good year for him.
yeah,
And I think he
yeah.
was even on the cover of one of the Madden games recently.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was about maybe Madden 23 or 24.
That sounds right. I forget exactly which one, but I know
Yeah,
it was
I
in the
feel like it
past
was
two,
one of
three
those
years.
two. Yeah, yeah. That would be. Yeah, I'm pretty excited now, and I'm pretty nervous because I've known the Bills to consistently collapse in the postseason against the Chiefs, but I feel like even since last year, there have been some noticeable improvements in their performance and their execution. So I feel at least a little more confident.
Well, one thing I can definitely say is that when that game happens, I would say at least 95% of all NFL fans will be rooting for the Bills.
Oh, yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
Like I've already posted several images and jokes and memes about how everyone's going to gather together to cheer them on. One of them taking a scene from Avengers where all the heroes come together to fight the main villain. So it's like that's kind of what's going on now because a lot of people are sick of seeing the Chiefs. They won the last two Super Bowls and at least one or two others not too long before that. They've been to the NFC or rather AFC championship game the last 7 times in a row. So it's like, can we switch it up a little bit? Especially since it just seems like the Chiefs are getting way too many calls that favor them in some very crucial moments.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
And that honestly was everything I had.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I also said, like I already wrote down like possible Super Bowl berth for the Bills, wrote about Artists Unlimited.
Mhm.
I have a couple other things unique to my list though. Specifically at the top, uh, movies on the horizon. The first one is the new Michael Jackson biopic, simply titled Michael. And yeah, it's I'm not as like into Michael Jackson's music as I was maybe like a decade ago, but his life story is definitely oddly compelling to me. Like if you know like the mental and emotional struggles and relationship issues and stuff that he had,
Sure.
and how that kind of uh, how that kind of affected his overall life and maybe arguably led to his downfall at the end. I feel like as long as they don't maybe sugarcoat his issues too much, it could make for a good cautionary tale and make for a good sort of cautionary story about like like when you don't have like a healthy life foundation or
Mhm.
whatever, you know, then disaster is inevitably going to strike. And I hope that to a good extent this film will acknowledge that. I've not yet watched the trailer. I don't know if there's one out yet, but I probably will shortly. But
Now, do you know who's making that movie?
um it's directed by Antoine Fuqua, who directed Training Day and the Equalizer films with Denzel Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I was asking because I wasn't sure if maybe the same people who did the Elvis biopic would also tackle this one, which would be
Hmm.
kind of interesting, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I just feel like, I'm not as interested in like in like the historical highs and such of his career. I feel like I want something that really focuses more on maybe the bad and the ugly and maybe a little bit of the good in his personal journey, and maybe just because I feel like we need to be careful how much we glamorize or deify Hollywood stars. I feel like we got to get to who they are as people and not just merely celebrate what they did professionally.
I would definitely agree because a lot of people, when they look at a celebrity, they only see what is on camera. They don't
Yeah,
usually get to experience what their life is like when a camera's not pointed at them.
yeah,
Uh, Now, there is a lot of little tidbits of Michael Jackson's life that people do know about.
yeah,
So I feel like it would be important to address those because really, even celebrities' lives aren't always sunshine and rainbows.
yeah, yeah. And Michael's in particular was arguably disastrous and very troubled and very unstable, and and with his mental health and the drugs and run-ins with the law. I feel like I feel like that's something that's been sugar coated too much, and I feel like we got to kind of stop that.
And if I recall correctly, he had some issues with his father, but I could be wrong.
Right? Yes. Arguably, that was some a big kind of a fuel for like how he carried himself later in life because he had a very troubled relationship with his dad. And- Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely checks out because I feel like a lot of kids who or young adults that get themselves into trouble, it's partly because they either did not have good parents or they just did not have parents, period.
Right. Yeah.
So they didn't really have someone to tell them the difference between right and wrong. You should do this, you should not do this, stay away from that, embrace that. So I could definitely understand why it would have happened to him as well.
Yeah. 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 But on a more positive note, there is in November, scheduled for November, the follow-up to the Wicked movie, part two, technically, which will cover the second act of the musical around the same time as the first came out. It's called Wicked for Good, this new part,
Okay.
and I'm probably in reference to a song in the second act. I have said more than once on this show before how impressed I was with the first film, which covers the first act, and and the production value and the acting and all that is really up to par, if not more.
Now, do you think this would technically be considered a sequel or no, considering it's still the same story, just the second half of it?
I wouldn't consider it. I would consider it personally a part two of the same story, just a separate movie.
Okay.
But but I know there are like people who would probably a bit of a strong word, tempted to say sequel, but
I feel like the argument could be made either way.
yeah, yeah. And taken there are a couple of Disney films reportedly on the horizon. One, the live action film of Lilo and Stitch, which I know during an earlier episode I did do some Google research on some images, and it looks pretty good from what I saw. And it would be pretty interesting because Lilo and Stitch is uh, pretty much a charming modern cult classic. I saw it when it was in the theater and saw it a time or two more, or so more when it was out on like video or whatever. But
Mhm.
so so I don't know. Were you did you like frequently see the film yourself?
I don't think it was a movie that we ever owned, but it definitely was one that I would see on occasion when visiting friends or family, because a lot of other people enjoyed it as well. And Stitch, after a while, he quickly became one of my favorite Disney characters in general. I think Donald Duck and Stitch kind of go back and forth as to who my all-time favorite is. But yeah, Stitch is a very likable character for me. I feel like the story in general was very fun and creative with the aliens and such. And when I heard that they were doing a live action remake, I wasn't too surprised, especially since Disney has been basically flipping through their entire library to see what they haven't done a live action remake of yet. And the other thing I was concerned about at first is what was Stitch going to look like? Because in my personal experience, the last time they had a live action version of a furry blue character, it didn't turn out too well at first.
No, but I think they've improved it though.
Well, they definitely fixed it. And for those that may not know what I'm talking about, I'm referring to the first trailer for the first Sonic movie that came out because everybody lost it over the way Sonic looked. They did not like it at all. And then they delayed the movie so they could, for the lack of a better word, fix it. So when they did announce live action Lilo and Stitch, I was worried that Stitch was going to have the same problem. But when they revealed him at the D23 Expo last year, I was like, you know what? He looks really good. So hopefully the rest of the movie will follow suit.
Yeah. 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 And then this is something I didn't think was necessary, but if it's done right, it it, it might be not bad. Freaky Friday, it's called, and it's a sequel to Freaky Friday, specifically to the 2003 Disney version of Freaky Friday, and they're bringing back Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis for it. And yeah, I I will say I'm a fan of its predecessor. It's
Mhm.
for a while I considered it, at least for a while in the past, I considered it one of my all-time favorite films. It's probably a low end at her best, and well written story, well made. I, I I like the earlier film, and I guess I would be at least a little bit curious to see the, what this new one entails.
Yeah, I know I've seen Freaky Friday at least once, but it was a long time ago. I may need to see it again just to refresh my memory. I know the main premise, like they
Yeah,
swap bodies essentially.
yeah,
Um, but it's definitely interesting considering another film trend that seems to be going on right now is a few film franchises are kind of being brought back despite not having a film for at least a decade or two. They did that with Top Gun. They recently did that with Gladiator, and now they're doing it with Freaky Friday. So it
and they did
seems
that with The Incredibles.
that is true, which is now getting a third film.
Yeah,
Although I will say I at least knew the reason that Incredibles took so long to get a sequel because, as we've mentioned before, Brad Bird, the director, said he didn't want to make it until he thought he had something that was as good or better than the first. So I am
yeah,
kind of
and we
curious to see what the third one entails.
yeah, I am too. And a little bit of a side note, actually, me, Jordan, and I have a friend who is actually hosting a movie night this weekend, the weekend after we're recording this, and Incredibles 2 is going to be the movie. And I was telling Jordan about this earlier and seeing if maybe he wants to go. And I think he said he is likely going to. So,
It's one of those things where I want to say that I can maybe something will come up out of nowhere that'll be unexpected, but as far as I know, I can make it. And I will say, I want to say that I enjoyed the second one about as much as the first one. The only drawback I would say the second one has
hmm,
is that for me personally, and I know the experience is different for everybody, is that the reveal of who the villain was came from a mile away. Like I could see it coming from a mile away. Even when they first released the trailer and they showed this guy who was like a Mr. Incredible fanatic and then eventually brought in his sister, it's like, okay, I feel like the villain has to be one of these two people. And then when they revealed that the sister's name was Evelyn Dever, which is a play on the phrase evil endeavor, it's like, okay, now I know who the villain is. It's like, granted, in the first one, you knew who the villain was going to be very early on in the story, but it was told really well. Whereas, like, they set it up early on, like, yeah, we know that you know this is going to be the villain. Whereas in the second one, it was meant to be like a mystery, like who was behind the mask. It's like, yeah, they had a little bit of a fake out in there, but I could still tell who the overall villain was going to be. But I'm still excited for the third installment.
yeah, I believe the like popular consensus was that the screenslaver wasn't as compelling or dangerous or whatever as Syndrome was in the first. And I would probably agree with that, but I only have like one memory of a viewing to go off of because I saw it just the one time during its
Right.
theatrical run. But assuming I'm going to go to this movie night on Saturday night, I will of course view it again,
Right.
and maybe something will change. I don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely say that Syndrome, if nothing else, is at least the more dangerous of the
Yeah,
two villains. Because whereas the Screenslaver was more so just controlling the minds of other people, and just trying to stop superheroes from being legal so that people would be less dependent on them, Syndrome was straight up killing people.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it out of spite of superheroes in particular. It was more like he wanted to show that he could do all these incredible things, making Mr. Incredible regret not taking him on as a sidekick. So it's like he was killing people to make a point.
Yeah.
It was practically sport to him.
Yeah. 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 It kind of reminds me of a story that happened. This happened decades ago. There was some guy in California, right? And this is probably a famous story to a lot of people, but uh, basically there was a guy who got a job at the same company as this woman, and kind of became so infatuated with her, so obsessed with her, following her everywhere, and eventually she got a restraining order, at least for temporary, against him. And then the day before the hearing to make it permanent, he shows up. By this time, he's been fired from the place. He comes to this workplace place and shoots multiple people, and then in the conversation with the police, he's like, I gotta show people that I'm not a wimp. Whatever, and that she's got to pay for what she did to me. It's like super psycho narcissism.
Yes, some people will start acting like that when they've been rejected or turned down by somebody, and it can be a very dangerous thing. And
Yeah,
stories like the ones we've just talked about prove that.
yeah, yeah.
So, granted, it's not necessarily the fault of the person who rejected them, but
Right.
sometimes the way they do it
Yeah.
can play into things.
Well, no, I don't think the person who rejected him in this case was in the wrong at all. Really, it was just that it was a very different time. It was a difficult situation. There wasn't like like the like same level of legal laws against this kind of behavior. So it was a difficult position for her, very, very awkward and very challenging. So, and I think she really tried her best to do it civilly.
Well, yeah, and I would definitely say the same for Mr. Incredible, at least at first. Because, yeah, I can definitely understand why he would be annoyed that old Buddy at the time was constantly popping up while he was on the job or just being where he wasn't supposed to be. It's like, yeah, I would definitely get a little frustrated or annoyed. But it was when he finally said, "Fly home, I work alone." At that point, he was just like angry with him. And eventually he was yelling at him and got him into the back of a cop car. And that pretty much cemented it. So
Yeah,
he could have, I feel like he could have been a little bit more patient with him, especially in certain scenarios. Like they were in the room with a villain who could blow stuff up.
yeah,
So it's like the last thing you want to do is irritate anybody.
yeah. Like, well, like when it's a stressful, high pressure situation, I feel like it's not that easy to consistently do the logical thing. So I can't totally blame Mister Incredible.
Oh yeah, and like he definitely like I definitely understood why he did what he did and how he did it. But at the same time, I wonder like if he was a bit gentler
Yeah,
with him at times, would things have turned out different?
yeah. Mm, it's a fair question. Yeah. Um, and I just got one more thing on my list. I kind of mentioned this before, probably on the show, that my high school is performing the musical of Footloose,
Mhm.
and I got a ticket for myself and another friend of mine to go in about a couple of weeks to see that. And there are a couple of our mutual friends who have performed in Artists Unlimited with us, including the past year. And one other person whom I said, came to our past couple productions and has been been a very great friendly supporter and has been just a very pleasant fan to have, and I'm just looking forward to seeing them all in person again more than anything.
Oh yeah, seeing any one of those people, especially a group of them, is always exciting. It's just, I think I've said this before on this show, that a lot of the people in Artists Unlimited, if not all of them, it's like an extended family. We all treat each other well. We all welcome each other with open arms and just have great conversations, great experiences. And Footloose is one of those stories where even if you've never seen it before, there's a really good chance you've heard its main song, whether it be at a wedding or some other dance party or what have you, because that is a common one people use, and I can see why.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been used quite lately since they announced they were going to do it. Like even at our own after party, one of our cast that's kind of did a little cryptic plug for it and put it on our set list, sort of. And then we had a Christmas party,
Mhm.
and DJ played that song as well. So yeah, yeah, I feel like yeah, definitely we've kind of even maybe even if just unconsciously we've been doing our part plugging for it.
Right. I don't know if it would be one that Artists Unlimited does or not, but if we do, I'm sure it could be really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's maybe a bit um, from well, at least my memory. I just have my memory of the film to go off of, which I only watched once, but it's a bit more what you'd probably consider today PG-13 material, but no, but not crass, but nonetheless PG-13 level. But yeah, I feel like yeah, generally our productions tend to be like middle school and family level. So I feel like that's pretty pretty far from the realm of at least likelihood, but hypothetically, I suppose it would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I am like you, where I haven't seen any version of it in a while, so I don't remember all the details. Uh, but it does sound like it might be just outside of the kind of show we'd be able to do. But if for some reason they do decide to do it, I feel like it could be a fun time.
Yeah, I could say the same thing for like a couple of musicals that I think I've mentioned before, like She Loves Me and Little Shop of Horrors. That would probably be likely above our level also, but ones that I would be interested in also if offered the chance, you know.
I definitely do. We'll just have to see what show they announce in the coming months.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this time, and anybody wants to leave a question or comment or response to anything, you can just go and keep up with my posts or whatever, or DM on Seth underscore Mariano underscore AU on Instagram. Also do that in the YouTube comments section, and you can stream every episode on YouTube, Spotify, and Anchor.
Yeah, and if you have any questions about previous episodes that we've had, including this one, feel free to let us know what they are. And based on what we talked about today, let us know what you're looking forward to in 2025.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let us know, what are you looking forward to. I'd like to know.
Is it movies like us, or some production you're going to see, or vacations, or something else entirely?
Or the coming football games, of course.
Yep, that is very true.
Yeah. Okay. So until next time, we will see you. Take care.
So long, everyone.